Good morning, folks. We're giving it just a couple of more minutes. I'm getting a lot of messages that folks are having trouble getting in. All right, put that aside and give the dog a bone. Are you gonna take that? All right, guys, good morning and welcome to another week of Coffee PD. Originally, this was a plan for a much larger section in that I was going to cover more comprehensively the idea of how we can use Schoology to have our students collaborate and work together. But as I started to put together my notes for discussion board and media gallery, there was really just so much going on there that I decided to be kind to myself and you and really focus in on that versus throwing out all these other ideas I had too, because we have more Fridays for that. So the focus today really narrowed down to the idea of what can we do with discussion boards? What can we do with media galleries? And we're going to do like an overview of the basic features, but also look at some ideas of how to practically apply them to your classroom and some of the advanced features, some of which have been new since we did the original training as Schoology is growing and growing as the most popular LMS in the country right now, and hearing feedback and figuring out how to balance this. So let's jump in. All right, let me clean my screen up a little. Okay, that'll work there. And Jason, I'm assuming you got the door for me, so I can minimize that. All right, so we are going to look at how to add a discussion board to your course to create a forum for collaboration. So with discussion boards, students can respond to a prompt, reply to each other's comments, share attachments, and receive grades for contribution to the discussion thread. So let's come here. This is my active class, but I made this little folder and told my kids to ignore it because I actually do want to pull in some active discussion boards use and not just all the theoretical stuff, which sometimes doesn't help make it tangible examples. So we are going to do add materials, and I can do it here, of course, and then click and drag it where I want. But also remember, once you're inside a folder, you can go wherever that little green line is, which is where your cursor is. And if you click on that, it'll let you add something right there inside that folder. Just, a little hot tip. Ooh, there we go. I was taking some time, wasn't it? Quick tip that you may have forgotten with so much of Schoology to learn over the past couple of months. So, okay, so we did add material, create a discussion. Again, click that green line. You won't have to click and drag it. It'll put it where you want it, but you have to be inside a folder. Now on your main screen, we're going to enter a title and enter a description. It will bring up, cookies of former discussion boards or Schoology titles that you've had. So now this may also serve as your space to provide a prompt, or you might choose to start a discussion thread to separate the emphasis of what that prompt is instead. So let's take a look at a couple examples that we're going to bounce between in this session. of different ways to do discussion boards. So I'm going to pull out. This is the unit my kids have just finished. Things seem to be loading a little slow. All right, so there's their discussion boards. I'm gonna pull this up here for us to reference it quickly. And this is the discussion board in a couple of weeks that's done differently that I want to use, compare it. And also notice here, we're gonna come back to this, but I have the same discussion board appearing 5 times, and there's a reason for that. All right, so in setting up your discussion board, you could use that space for the description to include everything your students need to know. So in this case, this is your due date, these are your instructions, this is the prompt of what you must do, and then the responses are all student input. The other way you could do it, depending on the purpose of what your discussion is. Yes, Jason? Oh, okay, I got you. Hold on. I'm like, let me make a co-host so I can focus on you guys more. There you go. All right, so the other way, so that was putting my entire prompt there in the description, which will also give you that little window view of it here on the main page. Here is the other way you might choose to do it. So these are movie clips that my kids are gonna watch that are hot linked. Here is the prompt that I want them to read, and then I have started 3 different discussion threads that they'll go in and answer. So just when you're thinking about how you're going to set up a discussion board, is it just one question and the kids are all going to answer it? Or do you want to have one larger prompt and then you post as a discussion thread the different questions that they'll then reply to there? And if you're going to grade it, that's going to matter. And we'll look at that when we get to grading. So let's come back to our main screen here. And then back to setting up a discussion board. All right, so a title, the description, whether it's the prompt or just directions and any information you want to give them there, definitely let them know what the expectations are. And then again, we have, just like we saw last week and the week before in assessments, we have all of these text-rich features so that we can emphasize words with bold print, italicize, underline. We can change the color of it. We know these things by now. You can insert links. And there's a couple of different ways we're going to be able to do it, because we're going to look at the idea of attachments and how that looks versus inserting a link into your content. You also can insert content, whether it is a photo, the link we're going to look at, but then you will have these 2 options available to you, that you can attach Google Drive resources or YouTube videos embedded directly into this Schoology discussion board prompt. So if you have not done this yet, and your students will need to do this too. So let me switch over to a student account and show you, because if you've been actively using this embedded material or having your students do assignments through Google, it's probably already happened by default. But if this becomes something new for you, or if you or your students are having issues, this is what you need to do. So I'm in here as a student account. This student has never used Google. this student has never used YouTube in his courses. So before he does, to most effectively use it, he's going to have to come over here to resources and apps. To hit approve. And now he's able to access his Google Drive. The first time he clicks on it, it'll have him sign in. It'll show all his material here, which it'll show to you too when I go back to my account. And again, if you're going to embed YouTube videos, and I know some of my elementary teachers have been doing this, and if it hasn't been added as a resource to the student account, they are probably not successfully watching embedded videos. They are probably still getting a broken link and then having to hit the arrow and go out, which isn't a big deal. It's just an extra click. So you probably haven't heard complaints about it. But for it to work fluidly in the way that you on your side are picturing that it is working, then you actually need to make sure they've gone in and they've done this. And for my younger students, like my elementary students, you may just want yourself to log in as them and do this to their account versus trying to walk them or mom through how to do it. So again, those two, Google Drive and YouTube, have been added as Schoology apps at the division level. So they should be sitting there and waiting for you to add them to your course, all teachers, all students. And again, all we did was right here, click resources. All right, so all we did was right here, click on resources, click on the apps that are available to us. And again, Google Drive and YouTube will be available to everyone because they are downloaded at the division level, and then make sure you approve them before you begin using them. So as teachers, if you've used any of that content, you may have figured that out. If your students haven't, they still might have access to that content, but it's not the fluid process that you think it is on your side. So let me switch back over to my teacher account. And this is the class we're working with today. All right, and then let's see here. The other thing I wanted to show you real quick is right here has an embedded link. So for these students, they are going to watch this video. So this is where I did embed a link from that top bar. And so it works like they click on that, and then they go straight to the speech of the video they need to watch.
Gigi's mashed potato.
That's not it. In order to answer the questions down here. So see how this is an embedded link. All right, so that was the option from here. When you choose this, we're just gonna pick any random, there we go, YouTube. It shows up like this, the title of it, you click on it to go to it. If you choose the link down here, it comes down here as added material. So I think it's more fluid to have it up here in the description as embedded. Your teachers or your students just need to understand that that's a clickable link, which isn't always visible as you saw in the example I just showed you. All right, what else do we have going on here? Bam, bam, we've done that, we've done that. We've done the new student view, and students will have these options too. So these are options for my prompt. These are options for each response to this discussion board. So students will have the ability to add a file to their response, to add a link to their response, to pull in content from their Google Drive, and also to audio or video record their responses. So you have these choices as the teacher, and the students also have the choices to respond using those same features. Okay, so let's look at what some of these different things would look like. And these are like just really quick example boards to show you. Okay, so if we choose embed resources up here, I could go to my Google file and insert a Google slideshow. So this is the discussion board that my students see. So think about this, I think, is a really relative idea of how to use it in your content area, that you can embed a discussion, not PowerPoint, excuse me, a slideshow, flip through the slides, and your students will be able to do this. This is like from the student view, and then answer any questions or give feedback to it. That is using the embed feature at the top. Now, if you were using Google Slides, they are already available. All that stuff shows up at the bottom. This is an attachment. So if you go at the bottom and you attach your Google Slideshow from there, it still embeds it in this way that students can be interactive. But if that student has not approved that app I just showed you, this will be like an error screen. So that's why you need to make sure, at the high school, our students use Google for a lot of things. In the lower grades, they may not have accessed something Google. And you may have found this back when you were doing your Bitmoji classrooms, that when they were looking at it, they couldn't see it until they signed into Google. So when you're using Google resources, make sure that you change the share setting on it so that it's viewable to anyone with the link. They can't do anything to it. It's only viewable. And then you're able to embed the resources like this. Okay, so here is, if I just do an attachment, this is what it looks like to the students. So number one, we shouldn't be using PowerPoints in Schoology anyway. I'm still seeing it going on as I pop in and out of different classes. And it's another one of those circumstances where your view is not the student view. So the students are opening these PowerPoints, and in the Schoology, settings and on the iPads, things have shifted around. So pictures are covering important text. It's taken a long time to load between the slides. So we shouldn't be giving PowerPoints. But if we gave a PDF and we attach it, it's still going to look like this. Here's an attachment the students need to click on. It's going to have to download. They're going to go to a different screen to pop it and open it. It's just not as fluid as if you're able to upload to Google Slides and then embed it. And then, to me, it is much more convenient for my student to sit here, see the slideshow as they're responding to the questions beneath it. So again, the only thing we did there was when we made a new board, and we come over here to this insert content and go to your Google's resources, and it'll go right into the drive that you have associated with your Schoology account. And then you would just click on whichever one of the slideshows you want. Right here where it says import, choose import embed. And there it is. So that's the way that you go, the difference between showing it as an attachment versus actually there in the body of the discussion board, so students can flip through it and respond to it, still able to see on the same screen what they're responding to. All right, and then here is an example of, this is when you decide to do add video or add audio, it doesn't embed it. It doesn't as an attachment, but it just kind of turned on your video on on your computer, and you're able like to read aloud to the students, whatever you want them to do, and then they'll have that to click on. But again, that's an attachment, it's not embedded. So I think that idea of embedding Google resources makes these discussion boards just much more rich and visually appealing and easier to interact with. All right, and then just to keep note that audio and video option, that is for enterprise users only. So those of you who are still in those discussion boards, and you might not see this as an option as other teachers talk about it, but we do have these options for us and for students because we are enterprise users. All right, you want to make sure you set a due date. So it adds it to your course calendar. So here we go. Let's say this is due today. And enable group. Okay, so here's what I want you to look at, because I couldn't find a feature yesterday. And so I'm kind of like, did they remove that? That was a great feature. So in order for some of these features to become viewable, you need to enable grading. But it also takes away from some of these features. So just realize if you leave it ungraded, you can still score it. It just won't show up in the grade book. So perhaps that's not important to you. Or now personally, I don't want to post anything to my page that says ungraded because my kids see that, and that holds a lot of weight versus what I may tell them. So I'll often throw in my default assignments and then afterwards come back and say ungraded, just because I want them to realize, no, I'm actually reading them. I want you to do a good job. All right, so we have these same features down here available where we can individually assign discussion boards. And that's what I did in that example I showed you. So in a couple of weeks, I'm gonna put my students in groups and they're gonna work on discussion boards via a group. So let's come down and look at this. And so I have them in groups of just 3, and I only want them to see their discussion board. So in this case, because they have 3 different discussion boards, I individually assign the folder. But you can still do that with a specific discussion board if you want to limit who's able to see and participate. It's also a way that you can have your students small group to collaborate, and then you would go back and delete those names. So it becomes then whole group available. So, okay, does that make sense? So for example, you might make 4 discussion boards, and you might say 3 students on each, and only those 3 students can see it, only they can access it, only, the other ones won't even know they exist. But then after they've finished their discussions, you then could go in and delete their names. And when you do that, those discussion boards don't disappear. They now become visible for everyone. So it's a way to do, almost like an example of sharing a group project, a teach out, one of the ways we can do a virtual gallery walk, because remember, they can add photos and videos. So that group could work together, put their PowerPoint there, their slideshow there, post questions for their peers to answer. And then you open it up for the class to go and participate. So I think discussion boards, I think a lot of us are using them in a way that we post a question and the students can then answer, but we're not looking at them at the full potential of ways the students can interact with each other. So I really like this idea. In my class, we do teach outs. And so the students will be divided into groups, and we'll take this larger topic and break it down to like 3 to 5 subtopics. And then you go make the lesson. You make the materials, you make the assessment. It's on y'all. and I actually sit in as one of the students. And so this is the way I'm still able to do it in this virtual space, and that I'm going to give them a discussion board to work with 2 or 3 days so they can put together their lesson with all of their materials and their questions. And then I will open it up so that anyone in the class can then walk through those different discussion boards, which is kind of the virtual equivalent of students getting up before class and giving their presentations, and their peers are able to give them feedback. I did try last spring a lot more of, let me go into a breakout room and let the kids like work together there and then come back and present it to the class. But I mean, I'm gonna be honest that it wasn't working real well. That, when they come back, they had lost audio. This student had a good connection and that one didn't, but that's the one presenting and this one's not, and he doesn't have the materials. And we would take a whole lot of time trying to achieve that. But when I moved those student presentations to discussion boards, it's a much more fluid process. And I think meaningful work is happening there because students will often fear peer criticism more than teacher feedback. And so there's some real effort and interesting things going on there. So I hope that made sense. If not, you think it's an idea you want to try, let me know and I'll help you set one up. Especially as we shift into this next quarter, with another long 3 months ahead of us, how can we step up the game now? Here's a way we can do it. I mean, it holds everyone accountable, right? Because when you're sitting there in front of your screen, some cameras are on, some cameras are off, some people are answering discussion questions. Here's a way that you can actually make everyone participate in discussion and quantify it and verify it. All right, so let's see here. What other options do we have available? Come back here and throw up a discussion board. All right, so again, we saw that embedding content and linking content here is a more fluid experience, but you do have the ability to come down here and do it as attachments. And then there's that mathematical stuff that I'm sorry, I can't be a great help with. Right, we can individually assign it. Okay, and I did want to talk about this. I get a lot of questions of what's the difference between locking an assignment versus publishing an assignment, and why might I want to do one versus the other? So here's the answer. When you lock an assignment, it is visible. It means the students can go in and they can read what the requirements were. And in the case of a discussion board, they can read what has been posted by other students. But it's locked, meaning they can't get entry to it. They can't respond. So starting out with Schoology, I did a whole lot of publish, unpublished, but personally now I'm shifting more to lock because I don't want assignments to disappear. First of all, if you're relying on the grade book and you unpublish, it does some things to the grade book and it'll affect the grades. Most of us I know aren't relying on that Schoology grade book, although our kids might be. So for that reason, you might want to think about it. But also, I just don't like the idea of if a student didn't complete an assignment, out of view, out of mind, they don't see it. Whereas if you lock it, look, it's past the deadline. I'm not taking it. But it's there and they see what they're missing. But also, let's say how often have you posted an assignment that we're going to discuss in class tomorrow or next Tuesday, and but darn, these kids haven't started doing it before we've ever gone over it. So lock will allow them to see it. This is what's upcoming. This is what you're going to have to do. Here are your discussion questions for this unit, but not respond till you allow it. And you have the ability to turn it, to lock it now, or put the deadline in of, that's when it's due, and I'm locking it then. I don't want any more entries after that date. So, for example, all right, just a second here. All right, so I'm gonna come back to my real-time discussion board, show you something my kids did this week, and then we're gonna go ahead and lock it because at this point, there is no meaningful purpose for this to be continuing. So my students this is the College 111 class, and they had to do an argumentative essay on a bioethics topic. And I wanted them to be able to peer edit. And if you're an English teacher or if you're an English teacher and you've ever done peer editing in class, or if you've just been a college student, you know it's not the most valuable feedback. And so I wanted to do it in a way that it was meaningful, and these kids were not going to read each other's 8 to 10 page papers. And so I told them, I want you to go in and tell me what your thesis statement is and give me the 2 paragraphs you're having the most trouble with. And then they had and I gave them feedback. And then they had to have 5 of their peers go in and give them feedback too. And I gave them very specific directions. So include your complete thesis. And then for your feedback, you need to answer these 4 questions. So that was good. But let's go up here and we're going to do a couple of things. First thing I want to do is, look, this paper's due at 10 o'clock tonight. There is no point for these kids to continue to go in and give feedback. So we're going to lock it. If you didn't do your requirement by now, you're not getting credit for it. The other thing we're going to go ahead and do here is add a rubric. So when I create a discussion board, you know, once you say it's graded, you have to dictate what type of grade. Is it going to be a letter grade? But you can also add a rubric. And so here we go. So right here. So right now it's on that default letter grade, right? But I made a generic discussion board rubric for this. And so watch the prompt. And now this is what students will see. This is how your discussion board is being graded. These are the expectations. And we're doing it on a scale of 20. And you'll see next to discussion board prompts, this little window is now popped up that allows me to score students. So I could physically write in the letter scores before, but now, look, what do they have to do? A thesis, 2 paragraphs. Okay, girl, you got it. You got a 20. All right, where's my, oh, and here, check this out too. So these students were required to post once and respond 5 times. If I come down here and highlight user, I see how many posts they have made. And I can go in and specifically look at them because now I've highlighted Casey. And as I flip through all these discussion posts, okay, there's one, I can see everything she's contributing. And remember, your discussion boards probably will not be English level here, but I'm going through and look up, there's another one. If you wanted to specifically see that student's contributions, or if you just wanted to look at, all right, who has contributed, how many posts have they made, and then look, here these folks haven't contributed, not really expecting them to because they're my admins. All right, I know they're seniors, Chelsea, can you believe it? Okay, so that I think is another one of those advanced, really great features. Now here is a downfall I want you to keep in mind if you're going to grade. I didn't realize this. So Brenea had to do a post and 5 responses, right? So she now has a grade. If I come to, let me find another one of her posts. So remember we gave her a 20. And so now let me find another one. I'm looking for the highlighting. My eyes don't like blue highlighting. Okay, she's already graded, right? So if I change this, it changes her whole score. So realize it's 1 grade per discussion board. So you are scoring them 1 time for their activity for this discussion board. If you want to have more than 1 score, you need to make separate discussion boards. All right, so let's come back and, oh, and then these are some added features too. So once I've graded the whole class, I can click right here at the top and it'll show me their scores. So I can see who I've not graded. So I know who I need to go back and look for. I can add comments here. And of course, I'm not going to add comments I don't want the student to see, but maybe I'm going to make a comment to myself, like, message students, gave them extension to this date. But here's a way for you to kind of keep notes on your discussion board. And then there's like grade statistics and, what was the average score, how many people posted, all those mean and median and mode stuff that we're learning right now in 5th grade. Okay, but let's go back and look at which other features works. I want to save some time for media albums too. So individually assign, to lock, to publish. This is the feature that Melissa was mentioning earlier. I've gotten myself in trouble with this feature, so you need to think about what the purpose of your board is. And so with this little guy here with the graduation cap on, the default is they can all see each other's posts. If you turn this feature on, then students cannot see each other's posts until they post themselves. That feature has always been there. This is what's changed though. It used to be, if I open a discussion board, until I post, I see nothing. So I don't know if I'm gonna be the first one or the last one. With one of the recent Schoology updates, it's shifted now that they can see who is posted, but those words are grayed out. Kind of like if you ever clicked on Tidewater News on Facebook and you have to answer a question in order to see the text. That's what it looks like now, which is a good thing because a lot of students don't want to be the first person. So this way they'll see how other people have posted, but they can't read them. Here's where I messed up on that. So you want to think about it. Is there purpose to them seeing each other first? Or is it, you want to make sure that everyone posts their own ideas? So my students had to read the Canterbury Tales. And they each randomly chose a character that they were. And then they did I remove the discussion board already? Oh, yes, okay. So then I did this set of discussion boards. So for each character, they had their own discussion board. And they had to go in and they had to say, this is what I think the night will be like. And so the person who is the knight had to go in and read everyone's prediction of their character, but they couldn't do it until they posted. So I told them go in and put a little X there so it turns it on so you can see it. So just keep that in mind that there might be a reason, like if they're going in and responding to peers, they got to see what the peers write in order to respond. But if it's just a general discussion response, that's a great feature. Because I know y'all have been in some college classes like I did, where it's obvious that some of the discussion board posts were just recycling what everyone else has said, and you didn't read that. Or maybe that's just an English teacher thing. All right, anything we didn't, okay, one more feature we didn't cover. And it is one that disappears. This is the one that I was hunting for yesterday. And I was like, what happened to it? Actually, you know what? Let's go back and look at the real discussion board. So there's actually things here to edit. All right, so because I've enabled grading, see what's available here? We have these 4 options, right? When I turn off enable grading, of course it didn't show up there, so I've already got grades there. So I am going to have to make a new one. I'm sorry. All right, that had grades attached to it, so I had to go back and delete the grades. But see this option right here? It wasn't there, right? So for some reason, and I think it's a grade book issue, if you enable grading, you can't do this. But if you do not enable grading, you can take that one discussion board
and share it between multiple classes. So if you have that smaller class, or you have a class that's not real active, or let's say you have a class that does really well and you want your students in the other class to see what they're doing, here is how you can make a discussion board across multiple classes, and then it shows up in each of those courses as if they were all sitting in the same room together and not in different classes. So that is a really cool feature. But for some reason, and again, I think it's related to the grading is problematic with it. You can't grade if you do it, but share discussion board is kind of cool. Okay, so I think that is everything I had for discussion board. I don't have enough coffee in me, so I'm really relying on my notes. Any questions? And we're going to do media albums next. That's a pretty brief one though. Anyone have something they've done with discussion boards that's worth sharing? Okay, I got a private message asking about gradebook, and we can't make it invisible. We have looked on everything on our end of the house, and it's because of that PowerSchool sync that we can't. It's the same thing I think is happening like with elementary babies, God help them. They log on and they got 8 classes, even though everything they do is in one. But anything that PowerSchool says is a course is there. And of course, gradebook is just default. We can't do anything with. We are looking at maybe eventually syncing it, but that's definitely something that Schoology is dealing with the large volume of new users and everyone using different grading systems. There's a lot of glitches with that right now that it would actually take more steps for you to sync your grades than just a split screen and put them in there. All right, I want to change gears now and take a look at Jasmine. Talk to me. Let's look at yours personally. If it's something that's in PowerSchool, we cannot delete it. We're going to mess up report cards. If it's something that you have created or I have created, we have a few more options. All right, so let's switch gears and look at media albums, and we're going to flip how we're going to do this. So we're going to look at samples of media albums first, and then come back and look at how to set up one. So I have used media albums once. I had students here. I'll pull it up real quick. There's nothing real impressive about it. And excuse me. I'm a little disappointed in myself because I'm a very visual person. I mean, you guys have mostly been in my classroom. I'm very hands-on. You know, I'm that teacher that's still lining the halls with all the posters and things my kids are doing. And I really just didn't give media albums their fair shake. So the only time I have done them is when we were doing a unit on Romanticism. As an introduction to it, the students went over the different traits of art and literature. And then they had, this is what a media album will look like. And they had these these directions. They had to click on a picture and write a paragraph showing how it demonstrates the traits of Romanticism. And I love doing this. I always light a fire under them because my work's always due at 10 p.m., which means I get most of it at 9:55. So I said only 3 people can respond on each picture. Once there's 3 responses, you can't use it. But then I got them a little bit quicker. So let's take Lady Liberty here. And so the students would have the picture and then they just responded their analysis of it. So nothing really impressive, right? That's all I've done with it. But as I was looking at what some other teachers are doing with it and putting together this idea of 5 things you can do with it, you're gonna think it's up your alley too. I'm kind of like, I really neglected this resource because here's the thing with Schoology. There's like 3 ways you can do anything. Any task that you have in mind, there's going to be multiple ways you can do it. So I have not done something, but this would have been a much more visual way for students to do it. So we're going to go over this, you know, a little quick. We can stop and talk if any of these ideas jump out at you, if you have other ways to use it, or if you have questions, and then we'll look at how to set up a media album. So this is just 5 examples of ways that you might choose to use them in your class. And these are ideas that I got from someone else. So I don't want to put out there that
hey, I'm doing this, but I'm gonna start doing a couple of these. So the first one is share. You can allow students to share work to get peer feedback. So when we set up our media album, you have the option that only you, the teacher, can put work in it, or you can open it so that students can put work with it. So this was a science teacher who had students do a reading on the global water crisis and then do a one pager on it. And so just remember that you can drag these and you can make them bigger. You have some different options when you upload your pictures right here that you can rotate it, because how often do we put them in the wrong way? You can also crop it. So this is like a little side tip that's kind of like a, oh, I could use that for other things, right? So how often have you had a picture that you wanted just a piece of it? If you throw it in an album, you can now crop it. Shoot, let me come up back. Give me a crop. And I've got too many things open, but you can like click and drag the square around it and save just a piece of your picture. So just randomly, it ends up being a good cropping tool. But when you go into the album, you're going to see visually all the work that's in it. And so you can put in photos, images, you can do brief videos. If you do videos, keep it brief. Think Flipgrid brief, right? But then when students open it, they see what's here. And then we can click on each individual one to give students, for you to give feedback or for students to give feedback. And then it's real easy just to click through all the different pictures that appear in that album. So if you think about students who are doing work and how they want to, do you want them to share it with each other or just turn it into you? So think about if you have something on Schoology that you have them taking a picture of and submitting it to you, and you're really only checking to see that they did it, how much easier is it to look at this album versus opening each one of those Schoology attachments? But also, if you want them to show one another the work they've been doing, give feedback to one another, there's a way to do it. All right, second method that you might want to use is this idea of activating prior knowledge. So in this case, this was a teacher who is a middle school teacher who was teaching Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. And so she is about to go into a unit that the setting is 1930s, Jim Crow era, during the Great Depression, in the Dust Bowl. So are those things tangible to an 8th grade student? Maybe. So, but she went through and collected different photos of that time period and had the students go in and let's see here what the questions were. What feelings does this evoke? What can you infer about this period in American history based on the image? How powerful is that image? What questions are you left with? And this was the question, the one that got the most feedback, that students thought it was a flood. They thought various things and didn't understand that, no, it was dust. And then that was a real tangible, idea. And so she also suggested, which I agree with, is, here's some links to a quick kid-oriented video on the Dust Bowl, because it stirred up so much discussion that let's go watch this 3-minute video of what it's about. So just this idea of going into a unit and posting visual images related to that unit, whether it's historical, whether it's, science related, or just whatever it might be. And what do you know about this? What do you think about this? And so it's this idea of how do you get this conversation started before you present the material. So I like that one. I'm actually think I have purpose to use that one. Third reason you might use a media album. How about as a way for your students to select the groups they're in, or project choice, right? So in this example, it was literary circles for dystopian YA novels. And what I did when I set it up is they have the different books they can click through, and here's a trailer of what that book is about. So, if you're going to do something like this, if you're going to do this as a sign up, you definitely want to announce that, signups will open at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Go in and claim which lit circle you want to work with, because you can only have 5 students in each. But here's a way for them to go in and decide what group they want to work with or what topic they want. So maybe you have kids doing some type of PBL, and here are the 5 different choices. And so you're going to include a visual that explains, here's what the 5 different choices are, because this doesn't have to be just pictures. We can always take a photo of, a PDF of an assignment for, what the different options are, and this is how you sign up for it. And again, it's something that you could do. Could I do this on discussion board? Sure. But the visual here, I think, is a way to spice up your course, get a little interest as we roll into the next quarter. What do you want to do a little bit differently? All right, number 4 is, how about this for my elementary teachers? How many of you have these anchor charts around your classroom that as you're teaching different units, or when you have that 1 or 2 students you need to revisit something, you refer them to an anchor chart? Well, here's a way, and I think this is one of those, even when we're back in the classroom, we need to be doing this, because you now have every anchor chart available to your students if you just take a student or take a picture and throw it in there. So, you can tell them, okay, let's go look at anchor chart number 3. And they now have this available to them, housed right there inside of Schoology when they can't be in your classroom. But also 3 weeks from now, when we need to revisit something, here you go. I mean, and it was as simple as, I'm gonna take a picture on my phone or my iPad, throw it in here, and there it is. Or how about if you have that one teacher at your grade level or in your content who, this right here speaks Faith White to me, up, down, and backwards. Mine's not going to look that pretty. I'm going to take a picture of hers and put it in my folder. So, here's definitely a way for teachers to collaborate with resources too. So this one, and again, this example uses elementary and anchor charts. But again, in the content you teach, what visuals do you have? Do you want to make readily available to your students? So maybe it's maps, maybe it's diagrams of human anatomy. It could be anything that you want to build this album that they can always refer back to, and it's a quick visual of all those resources. So that one I really liked. I see a lot of application there with different content. All right, and then the last example before we look at how to set one of these up was using memes and comics. I think this is definitely right. I agree, Laura. And I'm being completely transparent in that I haven't used them. Things are going to change in Mick English because I like the visual and the kids need to see something different. So with the idea of using memes and comics, whether you are providing it, this is the worst one ever. Stop clubbing, baby seals. So what did a misused comma do to that sentence? And this is where our students are engaged. This is, whether you have them going out there and creating their own memes using memegenerator.net, or whether you have them out there finding their own memes, there's definitely learning to happen as they look through it, trying to find that best example. They're seeing so many others. So in this one that I threw together, this one I actually may use in my class because commas are hard. And so I found a meme that breaks each rule of comma usage. And so the students would click through and then explain the commas, how is it misused? How does it change the meaning of it? How would we
And so, I mean, it's a quick warm up, right? But it's definitely just the attitude of doing it this way versus here's my whiteboard with 5 sentences, correct them and put the comma in. It definitely sets a different tone to your class. So there are 5 examples of ways you might use media albums in Schoology. And again, I'm going to add the videos this week and the PD pathways to that Schoology group I made for Coffee PD. And for my sessions, I'm also throwing in my notes. And so I might even throw this folder of examples in there too. So if you're thinking that something here is sparked, let's take a look at, just real quickly in closing here, how do we set up a media album and what the options are. So again, remember, we can do add materials here, or just click on the green line wherever I wanted to show up, add media album. And there's nothing surprising here. If you look, there's not much to set up because it's about the content that's in it. So give it a title and a description. We can go back and edit those later if we want to. We can individually assign the album. So how about this? So for those of you who have some assignments that kids are taking pictures of and submitting to it that way, you could actually create a media album for each student in your classroom. And that way they're only submitting work to their album and no one else sees it. So again, why might you do that? So let's say I had 5 assignments this week and they're listed in Schoology by the assignments, and I'm really just checking to see the kids did it. But now I've got to click on the assignment and click on each individual student. Whereas if I had them put in the album, I can just like next, look through everyone's album and be done checking that in like less than 5 minutes across 3 classes. So yeah, I mean, now if it's something you're going to go in and grade and give feedback, there's other options. But if you're really just show me what you've done. I mean, and like anything, setup will take a few minutes, but once it's set up, anytime that kid can throw that in there. How about my math teachers? I mean, is this a way more visually for them to work out the problem and take a picture here that you can pop into their folder at any time to see them do their work? Or, they again could share it and comment on each other and feedback in that way. Like I know I've seen, especially when Miss Rose was at the high school, like gallery walks. So students would go around to different problems posted on the wall and work on them together that way. So I think there's a virtual way to make that happen. So we have the ability to publish right here. These are the defaults. So right now, comments are enabled. So on anything that involves feedback, I'm gonna keep that on. The one with anchor charts, maybe I wanna disable this. I don't need a bunch of poop emojis under writing. So the kids can't comment on it, but it's just a photo album. Here is the important one, who gets to add pictures to it. So again, if they're submitting their work, I'm gonna have it that we both submit, but let's say I'm doing that one that here course resources for you, I'm going to turn it off. Or it's something you're putting a deadline on. So as of this Friday, you may not add any more content. Here's how you would stop the students from adding content. And then once you create the album, you can copy it over to other courses too. So media albums, again, been using Schoology 4 years. That one little assignment I showed you is the only time I've ever used them. And just the more time we spend in the virtual world, the more possibilities we see. And again, students can add, let me go in real quick from the student point of view and see it there, because my goal has always been, let's keep them in Schoology as much as possible. So if it's something that there's benefit doing elsewhere, like, I'm watching some of the boom card activities that Benjamin does, and I'm like, that's good, but I'm never going to use Flip. Personally, I'm never going to use Flipgrid, because on a discussion board or in a media album or as an assignment, I can have my students submit videos there. So I'm not looking to send them somewhere else to do something that I could just do here. All right, so Mr. Hatch has apparently ran a Power School update this morning, and that quick new student lost his class. So we're not going to do that. Okay.
That's what happens when you have a non-power school enrolled student that I created. He doesn't really belong to any classes, so he disappears once in a while and I have to re-enroll him. But I'm not going to take you through all of that. All right, so that is what I have for today. Just looking at different ways that we can incorporate discussion boards. Don't think of them in that static way. I'm going to ask a question and you all give me a response, because there's a lot more interaction available there. And just, again, go back to the one that I was really live grading for you, and how easy it was when I had that rubric just to go through and click, 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 click. And all of this writing is going to get graded in about 7 minutes today. So it definitely is a shortcut for you, but a meaningful way for these students to be communicating with each other, helping each other. I have not done it this semester. I'm going to start it with the new quarter. Last spring I did it, and I think it went really well. So this is my folder for next week, and I added, here's a general discussion board. So use this discussion board to post questions or comments about this week's assignments. Students may respond to one another. Treat this as you would turning to a classmate in class to ask questions or share information. Now, the truth is I'm gonna be a little more laid back on this. And I plan on making a post about, I just finished watching Atypical on Netflix, and it's like the best series I've seen on there. You know, what are you guys watching? Because I'm worried about the social emotional wellness of my seniors. And so I want to have that check-in weekly. I actually plan on doing a contest of food, like, you know, the best food photo of the week of something that you cooked. So I plan on having like that one little discussion weekly, just to kind of keep things a little more lighthearted and casual, but also to have that discussion board. What questions do you have about this week? And then often by the time I go and check it, someone else in the class has already answered. So there's definitely all kinds of levels of ways that we can be using discussion boards and media albums. So I'm really interested to know, especially with those media albums, how you guys decide to incorporate them in your classes. I'm going to have this video available early next week, along with my notes and the PD pathway. If you have any questions, let me know. And I think that's it for today. So I try to not make it overwhelming. Some folks were overwhelmed last week, and I don't want to scare you away, because this is a very basic function in Schoology, but it's really your ideas that take it to the next level and how it's used. But setup, it's one of the easiest setups there is. You know, create discussion, here's your question, go. It's just what content you decide to use with it. All right, folks, that is officially all that I have for today. And feel free to stick around if you have any questions. And otherwise, we'll see you soon when we do Coffee PD next Friday. Thanks much.